if she's around, maybe. Clearly something's gonna happen. It's you! Tell us your story.
I was born in the back of the yards neighborhood on Chicago's South Side. It was where all the stockyard workers lived and worked. I was, from the time I was a teenager and I went to school, I packed boxes in the factories with all of my friends. My parents were immigrants from Poland and Czechoslovakia. And like everyone else, I gave pretty much all the money I earned to my mom and dad to try and support the family. So in my spare time, I tried to find young men that would take me out to do the only thing I wanted to do, and that was to dance. At that time, when I was growing up, the whole south side of Chicago was covered with ballrooms. They were so beautiful. And those nights that we would go out, it was like living in a different world. We had one dress that we would wear, but it felt like a new dress every night. And the young men that would take us dancing, they would tend to our every need. They made us feel so beautiful and so wanted, and like we weren't living in back of the yards, for sure. There was one night, it was a beautiful spring day in 1934. We had gone shopping, my girlfriend and I, Vern, she's my best friend. We had gone to 57th and Ashland. That's where everyone shopped at the time, where Goldblatt's was. And as usual, I was looking for someone to take us out that night to my favorite place, the O. Henry Ballroom out on Archer Road. It was the best place, and only the guys with good jobs could take us there. We met two young men when we were shopping, and Vern, of course, scolded me when I made a double date with them for later on that night. She always said I was a loose girl, and I was going to get in trouble someday. Well, I told Vern that she could stay home that night if she didn't want to come. So I went home and I talked to one of my other girlfriends on the block, and she was more than happy to go with us. So that night, the two young men picked us up, and we went down to the O. Henry, and we danced until 1 o'clock in the morning, shut the place down like we always did. And I guess we should have gone home, but as usual, I wanted to dance more. So I flirted a little more with my escort, and I asked him, please take us downtown, take us to the Loop where the nightclubs are open until 3 o'clock in the morning. Of course he did. We went down to one of the nightclubs just outside of the Loop, and about 3 o'clock, we headed back out in his car, and he was going to take us back to South Damon Avenue where we lived, take us home for the night. But something happened when we were coming out of the Loop, and we had just reached the intersection of Lake Street and Wecker Drive, just along the river. It was so funny because we had left one of the nightclubs, and just as we were coming out the door, my friend whispered in my ear, please switch dates with me. She wasn't getting along with the guy that she was with. Well, I had been riding in the back seat with my date, and she had been sitting up in the front with the guy that owned the car. Of course, I was more than willing to oblige. I was very friendly and could get along with anyone. And so I switched places with her when we left that last nightclub, and I got into the front passenger seat. And when my new beau came around the corner at Lake Street and Wecker Drive, where the Lake Street elevated train structure was, he missed the turn and he rammed into one of the steel support beams for the L train. Well, I was in the front passenger seat, and we didn't have seatbelts or airbags back then, and I went through the window, and the help came, but it was too late, and I died, actually, before I even got to the Alexian Brothers Hospital. As you can imagine, my death that night did a couple things in the neighborhood. It devastated everyone, and it also served as an example. All the other girls were told, see what happened to Mary, that loose girl that lived down the street. Well, a few days later, my dad's friend, who owns Satala Funeral Home, John Satala, prepared my body, and he laid me out at the funeral home. It's still operating today, actually, just a block away from where we lived. And it seemed like everyone was there. And it seemed like the whole city was there. They took me to Resurrection Cemetery out on Archer, it was blocks away from the O. Henry where we used to dance every night. And they put me in the ground, and everyone said goodbye, and they went back home to my mom's house and had some coffee, and that was the end of it, they thought. But a couple days later, a neighbor down the street, they always say that Jerry Palis was the first person to see me. He was this nice guy that lived in the neighborhood. And he always said he picked me up at the Liberty Grove and Hall Ballroom, which is also down the street from where I lived. And he became famous as the first guy to ever dance with me. But actually, the first person who ever saw me was a neighbor down the street. She had just lost her newborn baby, who had been buried in the same section of Resurrection where I had been laid to rest. And about a week after the death, she came to visit her infant's grave, and she saw me. And I think I scared her a little bit. She was friends with John Zatala, and she went and she told him on the street corner what she had seen, and she described me to a T. They both recognized me immediately. She saw me as I appeared to her. I was wearing my fabulous, short, dark haircut, very fashionable for the day, and the lavender-colored dress that John Zatala had laid me out in. Whenever people see me, though, they see me like this, because I think that's what they expect to see. That first sighting may have just passed into history if it weren't for something else that happened almost immediately after, and that was the very next Saturday night after I died. Some of my friends from Packingtown were going out dancing. I was the only one, of course, that wasn't with the usual crowd. They shut the O. Henry down at 1 o'clock in the morning, and they headed back up Archer Road, back to back of the yards. But when they got to Resurrection Cemetery, there I was, in the middle of the road. I appeared right in front of their car, and John slammed on the brakes. You should have seen the look on his face. I ran around the side of the car, and I tried to get in with them, go wherever they were going, probably downtown to dance some more, but they were terrified, and they just drove away. And they went right to the police station, and they told them our dead friend just appeared in the headlights of our car, and she tried to get in the car with us. And that happened every night for years and years to come. And my friends grew up and grew old and moved away, but others came. And I just kept trying to get in the car with them. I just wanted to dance again. And that was now, more than 80 years ago. And I'm still out there. You can ask anybody that lives off of Archer Road. They still see me. They still talk about me. And they still talked about me to all the ghost hunters that come from all over the world to try and figure out what exactly I am. And they talk about girls like me all over the world, vanishing hitchhikers, but I'm the one.
Resurrection